All right. My female athlete's going to love this. Hopefully we can tie some information in for the male athletes because I keep talking about, I'm trying to alternate men, women, and everybody. But I have Dr. Carla on the show to talk more about the female aging athlete because, as I just said, Dr. Carla, I am 51 something and I'm finding my body's changing and I'm trying to fight the stereotype of menopause. And as we enter those transition years, I've been talking about Dr. Stacy Sims a lot and her Menopause 2.0 program, and I found you and you're into all that. So let's have you kind of say what's your why, what do you do, and tell us a little about you.
Sure. Well, first, Debbie, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you and your listeners. My why? Well, I've been a reproductive endocrinologist for 18 years, 19, 20. I've lost track at this point. But I've also been an athlete my whole life, a recreational athlete. I've never been competitive or elite, but I've always been very avidly recreational in competitive tennis, CrossFit, various things throughout my life. So there are two parallel worlds that have been going alongside my medical career and my athletic career. And caring for other women and, helping people, I'm a woman myself. So just helping other women has always been a passion of mine, which is why I specialize in what I do. And I've always had an interest in the incredible endocrine system that we have as humans. So that kind of evolved my interest as a reproductive endocrinologist. And again, it's been running alongside parallel with my own athletic endeavors. And then finally, I got to a point in my career, which is about now and over the last 5 years or so, where, so many women in my own age group are coming to me who are athletes saying, oh my God, these hormonal changes are really, getting to me. I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to manage it. And so what has emerged for me is this niche of high performing women, whether they're athletes, CEOs, firefighters, police, not just in the menopausal years, but through all aspects of their hormonal life, from puberty through menopause, they're needing help. And it's a group of people that are lost in the medical community because the medical community does not understand athletes at all. And the athletic community, there's so few studies that are actually done on women. So it's this lost generation, so to speak. And it's one that my background is very well suited for. So it's like my why at this stage of my career is to help this lost population, which I am a part of personally. So here I am.
Yeah, I'm just messing around with my headset. So I think that it's really important to share this information because I keep saying what we've done in the past isn't working for us anymore. As I did Ironmans for many years and marathons and 50K races, cycling events, all this endurance work. And I've talked about heart rate training for 20 years. I've talked about Phil Maffetone 20 years ago taught me the max aerobic function type of heart rate. I've done metabolic testing and with New Leaf, and I just bought Pinoy metabolic testing this few months ago to start helping athletes of all levels to figure out, how should I train as well as a non-athlete? Am I healthy and how's my longevity? So I think it's really fascinating to me what we used to do 10 years ago isn't working the same now. And that, some of the things I would talk about is what have you found with our metabolism of, because we always talk for endurance, burning fat. We want to be fat burning athletes, fat adapted, because we're trying to go a long distance that we can't burn. We say, we've got 40,000 calories of fats to use on for storage. And then we've got carbohydrates, limited storage, 2,000 calories. We want to be metabolically flexible, but fat adapted. We're switching to the fat and staying there. And then carbs are backup fuel tank. But now I'm reading all the stuff I'm hearing about that, well, that doesn't work for us in this transition period of life, that all that long, slow distance training I'm doing to get better at endurance and to help my body composition changing that we're fighting isn't the solution. So how do we change our body composition and how do we work on endurance training now as that middle-aged time and transitional period of life?
So that's a loaded question that I
I
can
know.
spend days answering. But I think the first thing that we have to realize about this stage of life is how all-encompassing it is and what a dramatic change it is. This goes way beyond fat utilization and carb utilization. There is a whole world going on inside our bodies that's changing as a result of our hormones. I like to liken menopause as puberty in reverse, because we can all remember puberty and how awkward that was and how dramatic those changes were back then when we were teenagers. It affected us psychologically, it affected us physically. Our body composition changed at that point in time due to changing hormones. And now what's happening in the menopausal transition is that it's all going in reverse. So we're going from reproductive quiescence to reproductive competence in puberty, and we're coming from reproductive competence to reproductive quiescence. It's coming full circle in menopause. And those physical changes are just as dramatic as they were when we went through puberty long ago. So that's the first thing to realize, is that A, it's dramatic, and B, it's all encompassing. And then the second thing we have to understand is, okay, well, what does that mean for our bodies? It means mostly the two biggest things that affect athletes are muscles and bones, right? That's not the only two things, but those are two that we can at least start with, because the muscles have a lot to do with body composition. And what's happening in midlife is that estrogen levels are going down because the ovary isn't producing as much anymore. And what's also declining is the estrogen receptors on the surface of muscle cells. Now, receptors are like little antennae that pick up the estrogen hormone signal. So you think about signal and antennae. And the antennae on the muscles, they start to decline too. So when that happens, we start to lose muscle mass and efficiency of muscle function, just because these hormones are changing. And so what we need to do is we need to make an end run around this. And so I'll back up just a sec. What happens when you're losing muscle mass and muscle function is that your utilization of glucose also changes. So the skeletal muscle system is the second largest utilizer of glucose in the body, second only to the brain. And so if you have this whole system that now isn't working as efficiently, you're going to burn less carbohydrate and you're going to store more of it as fat. And so there's almost this relative insulin resistance. Stacy Sims talks about that a lot, that you will probably not pick up on a laboratory test. This is where your doctor says, oh, your hormones are normal, go home. That
Just
happens
had
to
that
us all
happen.
the time. Yeah, exactly. But these changes are going on under the radar of your typical blood test. And so the first thing that we need to do is we need to keep those muscles healthy. And so how do we do that? We have to mechanically stimulate them in different ways than what we are normally accustomed to. So like the power lifter, right? I deal with some pro power lifters. Well, they're lifting weights all the time. They should be fine. Well, not necessarily. They're lifting super heavy reps. Maybe they need to do a little more volume to keep their muscles stimulated, something that they're not accustomed to doing, as opposed to their 1 to 3 rep max lifts that they're doing as part of their sport. The endurance athlete maybe has never picked up a weight in her life because she's a champion triathlete, and that's just not what she has focused on. Maybe she needs to start learning how to do squats and deadlifts and working in that 3 to 5 to 8 rep range. So the point is to do something different. You got to shake the tree a little bit to stimulate the muscles and get them working again for you, so that you mitigate that decline. And the great thing is, while you're working the muscles in this way, you're also helping the bones, because the bones are declining too at this time. And so that is probably the first big step, maintaining your muscle health, that will impact your body composition.
So talk about the fueling fat oxidation and how that changes the lipid uptake. I was trying to research, and it's hard to find, why is it so not effective to do fat metabolism, burning more fat, zone 2, and that we need to do more HIIT training. And you talked a little bit the lower estrogen, but that we can't just burn fat as we used to doing zone 2 training. It's just we have less, we're insulin resistant, we have to figure out how to get fuel into the muscle to keep us going. But we used to think, fasted workouts and just keeping the carb down. But now we're, all right, maybe that doesn't work so well. I need a little bit more carbs every hour to keep me going to burn fat, which is opposite of what we've been working on to be.
So I think part of the confusion is coming to be because we're trying to paint this very broad, diverse population of midlife women with a broad brush, and saying that zone 2 is bad for all midlife menopausal women. We get into trouble because that may not be the right prescription for every menopausal woman out there. Because you think about it, there are billions of menopausal women in the world, right? They're of different ethnicities. Some are sedentary, some are pro athletes, some are power lifters, some are endurance athletes. And I can't possibly imagine one golden rule that applies to every single one of them. So I think the confusion is there because we're trying to find the one magic thing that works for everybody, and you're not going to find that.
Never.
There are. So I'll go back to the biological thing that does happen to any woman going in menopause, is that muscle mass and bone mass decline and muscle health declines. So that one biological truth that you can say about all menopausal women has to be applied to that athlete's particular situation. So for the power lifter, again, she doesn't need to lift more heavy stuff. What she needs to do is maybe she needs to do higher volume. Whereas your endurance triathlete, what that means is that, well, maybe we're going to try doing some heavy squats and heavy deadlifts. And so this is where precision medicine is starting to really rear its head, because in the medical community, they're finally starting to realize that, okay, we can't paint populations with these broad brush strokes. We have to individualize these things we know about biology to every person's specific situation. And so it's not an easy answer to the question, but if you take each athlete individually and use the tools that we have and the knowledge we have about biology and individualize it to her situation, you're going to have much better luck.
And that's what I've been listening to. I think Peter Attia and all these different people that are big podcast influencers out there talking about longevity. You want to do zone 2. And so I started looking at it going, okay, we don't all want zone 2. Some of us have been doing it for 20 years. I don't need the long, slow distance high volume training as a endurance athlete. I need the opposite. Is saying, it was always what I used to say, CrossFit people needed yoga and the yoga people needed CrossFit. We need to combine it all and have that variety and everything. So the longevity markers I keep hearing about on current podcasts of the zone 2, and that we need to do the zone kind of 5 sprint training with recovery to do longevity VO2 max as a marker of metabolic health. And for the endurance athlete, that's why I think it's great if we could test this doing the metabolic testing, see, okay, where does that person need more work on? And if it shows changes in their ability to burn fat to carbohydrates as we age, I'd be interested. I wish I could have tested myself every year the last 5 years to see, is there differences, a decline in my ability to burn fat, and I have lost of my metabolic flexibility. So that just shows that I personally would need probably, the HIIT training because I'm doing the heavy lifting, but what am I not doing? Then that's why I think we need to custom people's protocols based on, okay, what are you doing now? Let's switch it up and work on what you're not doing. Like the HIIT training, I haven't been doing as much. And so I think that's just fascinating if we could test. So do you think testing a way to see what people are doing with their metabolism or metabolic health?
I think we should use whatever tools are available to us and what are relevant for a particular athlete. So, like for instance, I can take myself. I'm a CrossFit athlete. And so one thing I have noticed myself through the years is that my speed, like with box jumps. I just did a box jump workout yesterday, and that's something I'm very strong in, is jumping. And I was shocked and dismayed by the fact that I was much slower than I was and than I have been in the past. And I've been concentrating on some other things in my fitness and have realized that, okay, I lost some power during that time that I was working on my endurance training and my heavy lifting. And so as long as you have certain tools and benchmarks, like for me, it's this particular benchmark workout that you can check in with and identify things. Like I identified that I'm losing some power. So what I need to do is to refocus on certain types of workout that challenge power, that is moving weight quickly and safely. So when you discover where those deficiencies are, then you can make a concerted plan to work into your current workout routine. Okay, how am I going to address this particular deficiency? And, you know, you can't work on everything at once. So this is where a really good coach and trainer can say, okay, during this time, especially if you're a competitive racer and you're dealing with off season versus on season, you say during this 12-week block, I'm going to be doing strength, focuses on strength. During this block, I'm going to be focusing on muscle power and speed. And during this, I'm going to be focusing on endurance. So planning things out according to your objective measures, like whatever testing that is relevant, is a really great way to individualize a given athlete's training and really maximize her potential.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, getting tested. I think, would you do blood chemistry markers too if people can get insulin? I just was recording another podcast that insulin, I find I never can get my doctor to do it. So, you know, getting insulin checked, because we become insulin resistant as we're older. Would you get that marker checked as well as any other ones like A1C?
There are basic blood tests that have their limitations, because with the endocrine system is constantly changing hour by hour, day by day. When you do a blood test, you get one snapshot in the moment that blood was taken. Yeah. It doesn't really tell you a lot about what's happening later that day, tomorrow, or even into the next week. But what blood tests are very useful for is ruling out chronic disease. It can rule out a thyroid disorder, which needs to be treated. It can rule out pre-diabetes, which should be treated either with dietary management or with other means. So blood tests are really good to rule out pathology. Now, you can have that relative insulin resistance, like I was mentioning before, without it showing up on a blood test. And what it just means is that my muscles aren't using insulin as efficiently now as they were when I was 30. Does that show up on a blood test? No, it doesn't. It's just my body is changing within the physiologic range, and you can't pick that stuff up, but you can notice it because when you step on the scale, you're going to notice, oh my God, my composition is changing. Or if you do the DEXA scan and you do, you know, the muscle and the fat and the water, the whole thing that the scan does, you see differences and trends. You have to be careful. How do those numbers affect your psychology? That's a whole other psychological dynamic, but using data is very helpful to identify what's happening. Blood tests have their limitations. So I do caution people on checking blood tests to know what they tell you and what they don't tell you.
Do you use like Whoop or Aura or any other metrics to track? Yeah, that's what I thought that.
Yeah, I do. I think Whoop and Aura is great. And one of the reasons, particularly for midlife women, is because sleep is such an issue for most of us. And sleep is also the foundation of recovery. So recovery is huge at this stage of life because we don't recover as well as we used to. And as a consequence of declining estrogen production and loss of regular menstrual cycles, it's more of an inflammatory state that we're in. And so we have to work that much harder to stave off inflammation and to recover. So the foundation of recovery is sleep. And that is a struggle for many women because of hot flashes and other symptoms. I like the Whoop and the Aura. I've learned so much about my own sleep patterns. It's done wonders for me personally. And I help my own clients with their sleep using those two devices.
What are some bigger lifestyle habits that you've done for yourself based on your sleep scores?
So I noticed with my Whoop that I get the majority of my slow wave sleep early in the evening. Okay. And when I first go to bed. And at 3:00 a.m., without fail, the cortisol spikes and I am up. I've got a hot flash. I got a million things racing through my head. And I find that very challenging to go back to sleep. That 3:00 alarm goes off whether I go to bed at 10 or whether I go to bed at midnight. But what happens is if I go to bed at midnight, I've lost the opportunity for my slow wave sleep. So I have to really make a concerted effort to go to bed by 10 o'clock. If I go to bed by 10 o'clock, I'm going to get 3 to 4, sometimes 5 hours of restorative sleep. I did a residency, so I think that kind of conditioned me to get whatever restorative sleep I can get as soon as my head hits the pillow. But that's the big modification I made based on my WHOOP data, was that I know that I have to go to bed early to get that restorative sleep, because, you know, when 3 o'clock comes along, the hormones spike and it's sometimes all over at that point.
Yeah, I know. I found that I cannot eat in the evenings before bed. Totally messes my sleep if I eat. And I need to avoid, I don't drink much alcohol ever, but when I do have alcohol, it really trashes my sleep. It's my deep sleep. And I think exercising at night too, I don't do well, and I don't have really good energy to do a hard workout at night. But if I do it, like I was trying different classes out, checking these gyms out, if I do 5:30 p.m. workout, horrible sleep. It just, you get all rallied up. You can't calm down, and my sleep quality is bad. So I've learned, best time of day to do everything in time. How I work, I go to bed 8 o'clock and I get up at 4:35 in the morning because I'm an early bird, but even without alarm, I'm that way. But you really can learn more, I think, about what is your ideal day and how to schedule your day to optimize sleep. As someone, for myself, that had adrenal exhaustion and could not sleep at night, wired but tired and exhausted all the time, I really take my sleep seriously. And I know for athletes coaching them, or everybody, if you want to get better, let's focus on your sleep. Almost sometimes you have to prioritize that first and go backwards.
For sure. And I think we also, the two of us going through what helps us individually, I think that also highlights the advantage and the benefit of athletes journaling and knowing themselves. It's like, if you experience brain fog during the day, well, document that. It happens for me, it happens at 2 p.m. Why is that? What is happening at that point? Well, maybe I didn't eat lunch. And so if you can, keep a journal, of course, you don't want to be obsessive about it and be consumed by it, but you want to just keep track of your day. If there's a symptom that's bothering you, well, write down what time it happened and what was happening around that time. When it comes to sleep, when you get crappy sleep, WHOOP is great with this. You can document and follow and track all sorts of things. The better you know yourself, the better your coaches and your physicians can work with you to optimize your performance. And this isn't just true for midlife women. I tell my reproductive age athletes the same thing. The better you know your menstrual cycle, the better you can train alongside it. And the more you're going to know yourself. That way, when there's a change, like if you suddenly lose your menstrual cycle, okay, what just happened? Okay, I'm training for an Ironman and I haven't increased my calories. So the more you know yourself, no matter what age you are, that's the most valuable data that anybody will ever collect.
Yeah, I think men and women, it's important. So with that, with the low energy availability, I think is a big topic for women, especially female athletes, I've been trying to talk about fasted exercise last 2-3 years and intermittent fasting, and taking all this information top, again, influencers, podcasters, doctors speak about, isn't for the fit and active woman. And I think looking at the data for, intermittent fasting. And I know I've just recorded a podcast yesterday. I was laughing at everyone I know that's a podcaster. They're guys and women that talk about OMAD over the years and fasting once a week and doing a 24-hour fast. And now everyone's switching, going, okay, I'm not fasting anymore. But they're all fit and active people. I think we all learned the hard way because we're trying to do what research was showing us, but we forget that, okay, we're not all the same. We're actually not metabolically unhealthy. We are healthy and we are very fit and active people, that we need to adjust the recommendations out there for the longevity, cell autophagy and all that, because we're already exercising once or twice a day and being movement and doing all that stuff. So what have you found with your area of expertise and experience with your clients with fasted exercise, intermittent fasting? What have you learned over the past few years, since it's kind of evolved and now it's kind of circling back to, we need to eat more protein?
Sure. So one of the things that we need to realize about sex differences, and I think Stacy Sims is like she's the guru on sex differences and training and metabolism, things like that. But from a hormonal standpoint, one of the biggest differences between men and women is that women are exquisitely sensitive to energy availability. And this is tied to reproduction and it's tied to survival. So there's two endocrinologic pathways that communicate directly with one another. It's the cortisol stress response system, the fight or flight system, is connected directly to the reproductive axis. So what happens when energy availability is low is it directly impacts and shuts down the reproductive axis. And so we see this pattern that happens through all stages of life. Puberty and the onset of puberty, still a mystery to endocrinologists, but we do know that body composition plays a huge role in the onset of puberty. And so nature has designed it this way because women carry pregnancies. We are responsible, not solely, obviously, because it's a male component, but from the standpoint of carrying a pregnancy, a healthy pregnancy, energy availability is so important, and we are wired that way. And so when we fast, and this is the healthy, fit woman we're talking about, not the obese metabolic pathology. This is healthy, fit women. Our cortisol system is working for us all the time. It's a good thing. That's what keeps us fit. That's what helps us get the personal record. You need it to survive. You need it for fitness. But you got to dial it back down, because when you dial it back down, that's when the body says, okay, there's not a famine. My periods can come. It's safe to get pregnant. That's what the body is saying, because the body is wired for procreation. That's just what it's wired to do. We don't always choose that as a route. In a civilized society, we don't have to, but we're wired for it. And these pathways are linked at the hip. And so we have to keep that in mind as we go through our lives. And intermittent fasting spikes the cortisol unnecessarily in the fit, healthy women who already is using her cortisol system to become fit and to become, to become healthy, stronger, fitter, faster. So we don't want to tax that system any more than it needs to. Enter in midlife women whose hormones are changing through menopause. It's a more inflammatory state because things are starting to decline, the muscle mass and the bone mass. We can't take care of the inflammatory toxins the way we used to, but we still have to get fitter. So we still have to get those hard workouts in, and we still need our cortisol to work for us. But what we have to focus on more now is recovery. And so if you start intermittent fasting on top of all of that inflammation that's going on, that is going to make it that much more difficult to dial down that system and to get the recovery you need so that you can function for your next race, your next workout, and for whatever life throws your way. So that link in female physiology that is not present in male physiology is why women are so sensitive to this, and we need to be so careful, especially in active, fit women.
So do you find that we need carbohydrates before we work out, or just even having some fat, or just cream in your coffee? What do you find for your athletes if they're going to do easy workout, say zone 2, or a high intensity workout? Because that's the thing, a lot of people are just getting up and working out. Are they going to perform better and have less stress in their body if we have some fuel on board beforehand? Can that just be some in your coffee? Stacy talks about the 150 calories of something in your coffee. You don't have to have a big meal. What do you think of the fasted versus fed morning workouts?
Oh, you got to feed your morning workouts. Again, you think about what your workout requires of your hormonal system. Your workout requires that you spike your sympathetic nervous system, that your cortisol goes to work. If you're starving and the body is looking for fuel, that's a stress that's already there. So again, the female body is much more sensitive to this than the male's body. And so when the body needs fuel, it needs fuel. Otherwise, it thinks it's starving and it's going to shut down everything else. So I am not a believer in fasted training. I think Stacy Sims presents a lot of really great data that supports that position, especially in midlife women, but also in young reproductive age fit women. There's really not a benefit to doing that. So nutrient timing, I think, is particularly important for women. When you need fuel, you need it. And everybody just biologically, the muscles require glucose as its first line when it starts moving and contracting. So whatever activity you're doing, you're going to require some carbohydrate because your muscles are going to exhaust their glycogen stores first, and then it's going to be looking around for, okay, where's the carbohydrate coming from? And it metabolizes fat, and it depends on the activity you're doing. You know, are you doing back squats or are you doing a run? Your body's going to need different fuels for different activities. But in general, you want to have a balance. You want to have carb, protein, and a little bit of fat on board before your workout and after the workout, ideally within an hour, so that your body can, again, start to recover and get ready for the next workout.
So have you looked at differences, what works for men, doesn't work for women as a nutrient timing, that men can do a fasted workout, women do better with calories in, post-workout? You know, we hear about this 30-minute window for women to get that protein in for muscle protein synthesis. Men can wait, you know, all day. They don't have that window as we do.
From the little that I have read on this subject, I'm not an expert in this subject. My impression is that it impacts men less than it does women. And in young men, I don't think, from what I've read, nutrient timing is quite as important, but it is for women. And again, my personal opinion is that it has to do with the hormonal pathways that are linked, because women are very sensitive to energy availability just because of how we're wired. So I think nutrient timing is a little bit more important for women than it is for men, just because of the way we're hormonally wired.
Do you measure clients' full thyroid panel and look at cortisol, like Dutch or salivary panel?
It depends what she's coming to me with. You know, if I have a client that's coming to me complaining of hot flashes, complaining of various symptoms common to perimenopause, I always check a thyroid panel. I don't check a Dutch test. I don't tend to do these blanket tests unless I'm specifically looking for something. That doesn't mean I don't think the Dutch test is useful. I think a lot of consumers get it, and sometimes you might pick up something in there. But again, you have to remember, you're getting a snapshot of time when you draw that blood. It's telling you what's happening in your body at that moment, which is constantly changing. So it might give you some insight to some things, but it's certainly something that has its limitations because the body's always changing. But when I am drawing blood, I am trying to exclude chronic disease. I'm checking thyroid panels, I'm checking glucose panels, things like that.
I just wonder if you see any patterns of so many female athletes doing the low energy availability LEA, struggling with, you know, not eating enough and exercising more, that we see any relationship with low thyroid, like a low T3.
Yes, absolutely. And this is particularly problematic in midlife women. And I think the reason it's particularly problematic in midlife women is because, and probably endurance athletes too, because endurance athletes, I believe, according to the 2023 consensus statement that just came out on LEA, that endurance athletes have the highest incidence of LEA when you compare them to rugby players and other types of power athletes. But that being said, when the body is going through a long period of time of low energy availability, other endocrine systems start to adapt, including the thyroid system, because what the thyroid system is largely meant to govern is energy. You know, when your thyroid is low, you kind of feel sluggish. When it's high, you can feel kind of hyperactive and anxious. So when the body is not getting enough energy, the rest of the body adapts to say, okay, I have to kind of shut down energy utilization because I'm in an energy deficient state. So that's where thyroid comes in, and people's thyroid hormones thyroid tends to adapt to that low energy state. Does that mean they need more thyroid hormone? No, it means they need to balance their energy availability, because once they do that, the thyroid's going to say, oh, we're not in the middle of a famine anymore. I can function normally again. So getting at the root cause is
Mhm.
really what will help the thyroid, not so much throwing pills at it.
Yeah.
I find that midlife women are particularly sensitive to this too, because when midlife women start to notice those body composition changes, the first thing they do is train more and eat less. And
Mhm.
so again, that prolonged energy availability is what starts to trigger the thyroid to dial down. But that's like a prolonged situation. I don't start seeing thyroid issues until people have been in LEA for quite some time.
Well, I just wonder, I think so many doctors, as I just went for my annual checkup because we pay all this money for insurance. I don't use it. So I was trying to get what blood work I could from my doctor saying, okay, this is what we pay for 12 months of the year. But the thyroid, what shocked me, and I feel like so many people are misdiagnosed, are given just thyroid pills, or they're not even diagnosed from their doctor with low thyroid or from their endocrinologist, that they're looking at. My doctor said they just look at TSH. And I said, I want a full panel. And we did that. But their doctors that they work with for the hormones said, no, you just need TSH to measure thyroid hormone. I said, okay, that doesn't help people. And then so many women are on thyroid medication and it doesn't. I have so many clients that when I get their intake form and they're on thyroid medication, but then I get full thyroid panel and they still have low thyroid. So it's just, you're not treating the root cause of why is your thyroid low. As you're saying, you might just need to change how you train and your fueling plan, that the medication is just a Band-Aid. It's not actually making a difference
Yeah, that's
for a lot of
exactly
women.
right. That's exactly right. And, unless you're a thyroid specialist, I know thyroid specialists tend to draw the full panels because they know how to interpret them. But if you're a generalist, an OBGYN, PCP, the reason they check the TSH is because that tells you that, and a free T4. You should also get a free T4 because that can tell you, is it subclinical or is it overt? And so that will tell you if you need to put the patient on medication, because that's what doctors do. You go to the doctor, they're going to give you a medicine. If you go to an allopathic physician, naturopaths and functional medicine docs, I think, are less dependent on pills. But allopathic physicians, they are ready to write you a prescription at the drop of a hat. So, you kind of have to just keep in mind the lens through which your provider is looking. If they're a naturopath, they're looking at it one way. If they're a functional med doctor, they're looking at it another. If they're an allopath, they're gonna look at it through yet another lens. So you just need to kind of take that into consideration too.
But I'm finding, as I've, moved from Seattle to Solana Beach, North San Diego, 3 years ago now, that I was trying to network with different functional medicine doctors here to do Panoe metabolic testing and naturopaths and women's health. And I'm kind of amazed how many naturopaths out there still, and I've saw a bunch for my own health reasons, but you would just get not prescription, but supplements and then see you 6 months later and I never hear from them again. So it's like there needs to be more of an integrated approach, that you have to work on the lifestyle habits. You have to change how you train and how you fuel to get results, not just take this thyroid supplement or this adrenal supplement. And because when I had my stuff, I went through 8 different doctors trying to get answers, but I realized, okay, it's me that needs to take ownership and make the changes. There's not any supplement is going to help me unless I change my way of living every day, and changing my workout schedule. And, the less is more is my mantra now. But I think so many people don't realize that there isn't a magic pill to change your body composition. You actually have to put the time in and change your strength training and the HIIT and the sprint intervals and all that stuff. But I think there's just still an error that we think supplements are going to help us and be the be all end all, that we still have to put the work in. And, Ozempic and all this other stuff out there, people just, athletes, non-athletes, I think pill or supplement to help me change.
Yeah, and many times supplements work well together with activity. I think creatine is a very good example of this. Creatine is very beneficial for active people who are actively training, but it is less beneficial for the sedentary. And there's more and more study coming out about that. So, there's a place for supplements, but to your point, it's not the be all end all. There's no magic pill. that's going to fix it all. I was watching the news. God help me, it's scary watching the news these days. But there was someone who was on with a doctor, interviewing the doctor, and they were talking about Ozempic, and the commentator was like, well, why would you go to the gym and expend all that effort? That's really hard to do when you could just take this shot. And like my head was ready to explode. I'm like, oh my God. So that mentality is out there and it's prevalent. And I think people just, logically think, well, okay, if I have to lose weight and this pill's telling me I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to do that. That's easier. But why would I do 100 push-ups a week? And that's too hard. If I can just get to my goal this way, I'm just going to take the pill.
Yeah.
And I think that's what pharmaceutical and supplemental industries bank on, is that people want to take the path of least resistance. And if they can convince them that the result is the same, then that's what people are going to do. And what happens is people realize the result isn't the same, and they come to us and say, okay, I've been doing this, it's not working, I'm at a loss, I don't know what to do, and then finally can get on the right track to a sustainable, healthy lifestyle and results.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer. I take supplements and I do the functional lab test and assess all that and put it with the lifestyle habits, with the sleep hygiene routine, stress management, with the exercise, the lifting heavy weights, and all the types of intensity variations we need in our workout. But I think our society, wants the easy way out. But with the supplements, creatine, other things, nutritional therapy wise, do you think for help women in transitional period of life? I mean, we can't out exercise bad diet and we can't out supplement poor lifestyle habits.
Right. I think fish oil is a very important supplement to think about, just because most of us, especially if you live here in the United States, the fish that we get is very rich in omega-6s. And so your ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s tends to be very high in a traditional American diet. And so what you want to do is to try to reduce that ratio and bring up your omega-3s. And so krill oil, I love krill oil myself. That's what I like to take because it has that natural source of antioxidants and is often sourced from Antarctica, which are some of the purest waters on the planet. So I tend to like to take that for my omega-3. And if you can reduce that ratio of 6-3, then you can theoretically help inflammation. So that is one that I like to take myself, and it can also, in some cases, help people with joint discomfort. Fish oil can sometimes help with that. I also like collagen. I like type 1 and type 3 collagen. I add that to my protein shake every morning. We experience a lot of thinning of hair in this stage of life and joint discomfort. And sometimes collagen supplements can be helpful for that for some people. Of course, making sure that you're getting lots of fruits and vegetables and all of the natural nutrients that come with whole food, that's going to help your hair, skin, and nails more than anything. But, collagen can also give that a boost. So, creatine, fish oil, collagen. I do use whey protein powder. Those are my main go-tos for supplements.
Yeah, I think those are good ones, because I find there's more inflammation in the body, as you said, as we go through this low hormone phase, and I have more joint tightness and just need more mobility drills every day. That's like, oh my God, my hips, even right now, I'm just like, I've got to sit up and go stretch. But it's getting the right type of mobility drills and the supplements and, the movement snacks throughout the day and doing all that, not again, just taking that and thinking that's all you need to do. But it is work. And it's, that self-care is, is work. And I think it helps us get through the transition time. And I always say, don't blame the aging process. Although I'm getting older, this is how it's going to be, is my point. I try to make every show that, okay, if we can do the stuff now, here are the tools, put them in your toolbox and pull them out when you need them, and realize that you can enhance the process and thrive every day and not struggle when you're 70, 80, 90, 100 years old.
Absolutely. And to that point, we have to be adaptable too, especially if you're 40 years old and things are just starting to happen. It's like, okay, you do the work, make the changes, but also know that at 45, you may have to reassess again, because you may start to say, okay, what's working now, what was working at 40 is not working at 45. Then it's like, okay, now 50 comes. And it's like, oh man, I got to go back to the drawing board again. So it's an evolution because perimenopause into menopause can last 6 to 8 years, if not longer. We have to constantly be willing to adapt our lifestyle to accommodate what changes we're experiencing at a given time. And that's going to be different for everybody.
Now, adapt reminds me of adaptogens or hormetic stressors, which are on my list, like hot cold therapy, doing adaptogens. Should we do the acute stress hormesis to help us adapt and get stronger? How would you suggest becoming more adaptive?
I think the best stress relief is mindset, yoga, mobility work, and tissue care. That's where I start in terms of dealing with inflammation and dealing with, the wear and tear of training. That's where it begins. Other things that can help that, and again, there's no magic pill that's going to make you recover. You have to do all of that other work. You have to figure out the sleep. You have to figure out the tissue care, what works for you. I like ashwagandha. I think ashwagandha has a long-rooted history in Ayurvedic medicine, and I think it's the real deal. Stacey Sims does talk a lot about ashwagandha along with other adaptogens, so I think they can be helpful, again, augmenting the foundation, which is the good habits. So yeah, I'm definitely a proponent of that, but not as a be-all end-all, as an augment, as a supplement to what your lifestyle habits are.
Well, that's what I keep trying to express. Yes, we need more intervals, sprint interval training, but I'm afraid the high performer, what do we think? More is better. So if I tell someone you need to do more sprint training, they're going to do it every day. So it is, thinking, okay, I'm supposed to change my body composition. I'm supposed to do HIIT trainings and sprints and heavy lifting. So they're going to do that every day, twice a day to get results. So we have to remember the recovery to repair and rebuild. That's when we get stronger, giving, do you do 2 days hard, 2 days easy, and, tracking your recovery so when your body's ready to go again. But I think it's thinking that, all right, I'm going to do more of that stuff, trying to get results, which will backfire probably again. You have to recorrect.
Yeah, it's all individualization. It also matters if you're off season or on season. I have a lot of athletes that train very differently when they're leading up to a race. If they're like, I used to work with a swimmer from Europe, and she was, like holds world records. She's amazing. And, I know nothing about swimming. I can barely swim myself, but I can help her on the off season. And so that's where we did most of our work. But when it came time for her to do her open water swim competitions, that's where I take a step back and say, okay, we're not going to do a lot of heavy deadlifting right now, because you got to focus on those swims. And really the way you focus on swims is by swimming. So, you have to change depending on your sport and depending on what the race schedule is. You got to train for that, and then you got to use your off season as a way to round out the rest of your fitness.
And what on the supplement, I also was going to ask about hormones. Are you bioidentical hormone replacement person, or do you think we should take some progesterone, estrogen, or DHEA? Do you work in that area?
Oh, that's my forte. I'm an endocrinologist. I prescribe more hormones than most people on the planet. So it's different for everybody. So I think we need to define what bioidentical is, because I think there's a misconception about what that means. What bioidentical hormones are is a hormone that is the exact same chemical structure as the hormone that's secreted by the body, by the ovary. That is estradiol for estrogen and micronized progesterone for progesterone. Those are the bioidentical hormones. Now, there are plenty of FDA-approved bioidentical hormones if you're here in the United States. Bioidentical does not mean your naturopath is going to put together a voodoo concoction that they based off of your specific blood test that took a snapshot of time in 1 millisecond of your day. That's not bioidentical. What bioidentical simply means is the chemical structure of the hormone you're getting is same as the native hormones that your body produces. And so to answer your question, yes, I use bioidentical hormones that are FDA approved. For some women who I treat with testosterone therapy for various indications, there is no FDA approved testosterone product for women. So I use a very reliable compounding pharmacy that I've been using for years as a fertility specialist that I know is reputable and PCAB certified. So I will use bioidentical testosterone that's compounded for women who need it. So yeah, those are my go-tos for hormones.
Yeah. Well, I know you're a specialist in that, so that's why I want to touch on it a little bit, because that's always a big topic. Should we do hormones start now, or do you wait till your menopause? And how to find someone that you can work with is hard because, as I said, the local doctors, a lot of people don't know how to treat the right way of what to take, or do you do estrogen patch, or just people order testosterone online, I think now, and get
so
shots.
First of all, you don't ever want to order testosterone online. And second of all, hormone therapy is not for everyone. You don't just take it to prevent chronic disease. There is no menopausal society out there, whether it's the British Menopause Society, the North American Menopause Society. There is not enough data to recommend using it for simply longevity or prevention of chronic disease, because these hormones have risks. They have real risks. And so that defeats the purpose of longevity. So you really need a doctor who is familiar with hormone therapy and what the appropriate indications are for hormone therapy, and who can have a risk-benefit discussion with you about your particular medical history and what the risks are for hormones for you and what the benefits are for you. And that's what drives whether or not one takes hormones or not. You're basically treating symptoms, because the thing about hormone therapy is that it does not recreate the hormonal environment of your younger life. Hormones in your younger life are regulated upon layers upon layers upon layers in the body, and you can simply not achieve that by taking a patch or a pill. The patch or a pill is a medication to treat a symptom. It does not recreate your native hormonal environment. And that's something that I think is lost, because a lot of people who market these products claim that it's the fountain of youth and you can get your 30-year-old self back. And that's just misleading and wrong.
Yeah. But and then that's what I think in the menopause Stacy's course I did, that you're not going to change your body composition either taking that. You still have to do the exercise. Again, you can't take a pill to fix everything.
That's
you
correct.
actually have to do the weights and do the intervals. The body composition, that is my biggest area I'm trying to work on to fight that battle, is changing how I train and eat. But it's, I think, misunderstanding for a lot of people. Think, oh, if I take this estrogen, I'm going to have this X, Y, and Z happen to me.
Yeah, I mean, there's data out there too that has shown that hormone therapy makes it more difficult to lose fat, that women struggle with this. So, that data is kind of spotty. I certainly wouldn't hang my hat on it, but I've seen multiple independent studies that have noted that okay, these women are having a more of a hard time losing fat. So again, you only want to take these hormones if you need them. If you are having debilitating hot flashes, if you're trying to prevent osteoporosis, if you have vaginal symptoms, vaginal dryness, painful sex, things like that, urinary symptoms, those are all the indications for hormone therapy, but certainly not for changing body composition. It's just not going to work that way.
Yeah. And eye wrinkles.
Yeah. Well, that it's interesting you bring that up, because there's some companies out there that have estrogen that they put in a topical type of thing to put on your skin, and you have to be very careful of that, because if you're absorbing it through your skin and you have a uterus that's intact, you need progesterone to offset that, because that unopposed estrogen that's getting into your system through your skin, it could stimulate the uterine lining into a precancerous state. And so be very careful. I would tend to avoid any topical products that, like for the skin, that have estrogen in it. They can be dangerous.
Yeah. So buyer beware. Don't buy hormones online.
That's right. Exactly.
I know. So because you're the Women's Performance Endocrinologist, WPE, what are some things that you've seen we can finish up with that are biggest errors people make as they're in this transitional period of time? And what would you say your top 3 things are?
I think the one thing that holds the top 3 is this notion that we need to slow down, and the demonization of cortisol. Unfortunately, cortisol is a very complex thing to understand. And what gets lost in this narrative of, oh my God, you can't spike your cortisol because you have to slow down. You can't work out hard. You can't, do intensity because God forbid the cortisol goes up. You can't get fitter without spiking your cortisol. Your cortisol is what drives your physical performance. It's what is going to help you get the personal records. It's what's going to help you get those lifts done that are going to keep your muscles and bones healthy. You cannot avoid that, nor should you. The cortisol is a good thing. What we need to work on is the back end. The back end is not avoiding the activity and avoiding the cortisol spike. The back end of it is dealing with the recovery and paying more attention to the recovery, reducing inflammation through tissue care, through sleep hygiene and doubling down on sleep and all of those other recovery things that we talked about. That is probably the biggest misconception that, to me, in my opinion, is destructive to women, because women are afraid to go out and work out because they're getting this narrative that cortisol is bad and I need to avoid it. Simply not true. You need your cortisol for life. You need it to be fit. What you need to do is be kind to it because it's your best friend. So when your best friend steps up for you, you got to step up for it after your workout and do your yoga, do your meditation, and do your recovery. So that's my top 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a big one. No, that's a key. And I think it is what I keep hearing about too, that whole cortisol. And that's why not to do so much long, slow distance for us endurance athletes is that will raise cortisol too much versus a little bit of cortisol recover. Cortisol's up, down. So more of that acute stress versus the long, hour and a half workouts every day that people do long. That's what I got from Stacy Sims' course. I thought, do you not agree with that? You're looking at me.
It's all a balance, yeah. Right? If you're a triathlete and you're training for an Olympic triathlon, you have no choice but to do those long workouts. I don't know how one does an Ironman without training for those long periods of time. Mm-hmm. So if that's your sport and that's what you need to do, that means that you need to double down on your recovery. That means that you have to strategically use those days where you're training for 2-3 hours at a time, because you have to intermingle those with appropriate rest. So it's not necessarily that you have to avoid the long workout. Your sport may necessitate that long workout, but what you need to do is get the right recovery, the right stress, the right integrated rest days that you need to keep doing those long workouts and not overtax your sympathetic nervous system and not recover.
And that's why I think it's important to look at nutrient timing for that post-workout to get us out of that stress state. We need to make sure we're getting the fuel on board to tell your body, we're good, we're okay, we're not stressed, we're done, and recover. Because I think it's so easy to not eat and just continue. Absolutely. Get home, I shower, go do something like, wait, I haven't eaten anything and I'm not hungry. But that's where I think having that whey protein shake with some frozen berries and avocado in there and whip that up. And I think that's what gets hard for people and leads you down that low energy availability spiral, because we work out the long stuff, forget to eat, and suddenly, boom, there goes your day.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Without a doubt. The body needs fuel when it needs it. So nutrient timing is a great way to do that.
So you've got lots of different programs you're involved in. Tell everyone where they can find you if they want a consultation, and if people want to learn more. I'll let you talk about, you've got a big list here.
Well, the first place you can find me is at my website. It is drcarlad.com, just all one word. And you'll find what I do there. You can book a consultation with me. There's a couple of types of consultations you can pick from, and you can connect with me directly from the website. The other place I show up a lot is on Instagram at Dr._Carla_D. I also post on Facebook. Those are my 2 main social media handles. I also have a blog called athleticaging.blog, and I have a sister blog to that for reproductive age women called Performance Edge, and that is simply performanceedge.blog. They're both on the Substack platform, so you can find them there, and you can also connect with me directly from the blog as well.
That's great. Yeah, that's kind of what I find as, again, I think it's personal reasons, but into this improving the aging process and Live Simply Ages and how to improve it for men and women, but the aging athletes and what we can do about it, I think is important for the men as well, because we want to
Absolutely.
not be crippled from overtraining when we're older and not being able to walk properly because you ran too much and limping around. So amazing. So thanks so much. You're very passionate and very educated. And I think, we need more people out there to help athletes, female athletes specifically, because we are so unique and there isn't one size fits all. And it is a personalized program. So everyone that listens to all this stuff on podcasts and blogs needs to remember it's N=1. We're all so different that it's hard to say everyone do this way, but that's what you're great at, kind of clarifying what you need to do and find that path for someone.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for having me, Debbie. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.